Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jill Hobson, one of the K-12 program managers at IMS Global, and with me today hosting this event is Kara Jenkins, Director of Marketing Communications. As a reminder to everyone as we're getting started, your audio is muted and it's going to remain muted throughout today's broadcast, throughout the webinar. However, we really do want you to interact with our speakers today, and so we're going to encourage you to use the Q&A to submit questions throughout the event anytime you have something you'd like to ask. And we'll try to get to as many of those as we can in the time that we have. So, as we get started, let me introduce our guest speakers. Adam Blum, Senior Director with ACT, Vikas Jaiswal, the Chief Technology Officer at Knovation, Ray Baranowski, Senior Software Developer at SAFARI Montage, and Keith Osburn, Associate Superintendent for Georgia Virtual Learning at the Georgia Department of Education. Just in case you don't know much about IMS Global, let me give you just a really quick background. We've been around as an organization for more than 20 years, and we are the largest and most influential member-based standards consortium in the world. We are well placed in terms of resources to be able to support our members in the development of standards, such as this new standard, Resource Search. We're a growing organization now at over 475 members, and we are quite global with members all over the world. And as you can see, another view of the folks who are members of the organization represented by countries and by type. Again, a unique factor of our organization is that we have suppliers, K-12 and higher ed institutions, as well as government and state agencies as members. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adam Blum to begin the introduction to our standard LTI Resource Search. Adam, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Jill. I'm excited to be here today to talk about LTI Resource Search. So let's go ahead and share. So, we started working on, while we wait for that to come up, within the ACT Open Ed product, we've always had an API that allowed partners to integrate Open Ed resources into their apps. We ran into many partners that said, hey, wouldn't it be great if I could just call one API and get every learning object repository? And we had several partners that were integrating many of the other LORs like Knovation and SAFARI Montage. In fact, just before we started the standard, Blackboard had integrated SAFARI Montage and they had integrated us, and everybody sort of pointed out that these APIs are pretty similar. Wouldn't it be great to have a standard? So that's enough about Open Ed, but so how do learning platforms integrate resources today? If you're using an LMS and teachers using an LMS, how do you get resources, find resources and assign them to your students? Well, one option here on the left is the teacher searches the learning object repository one at a time. So searches Open Ed or SAFARI Montage or Knovation or Guru or OER Commons or whatever the lore is. You pick a resource, you copy and paste the URL, and you go back into your LMS, be that Desire to Learn or Schoology or Canvas, and you paste it in and assign it to your students. The other option is that you install an LTI Resource Picker app. This is a mechanism where it uses the LTI standard for returning results from tools or quizzes or games back to the LMS to instead let you launch this app that's just about picking resources, collecting the resources into a shopping cart, and then saying, okay, go back to my LMS. And that was quite an innovation when it first came about. and certainly probably a little bit more efficient than the thing on the left. At OpenEd, we had our own LTI Resource Picker app. And so what did we notice the problems were? Well, it creates inconsistent user interfaces. You're in your LMS, your teacher cockpit, if you will, and you're switching to a different user interface that is provided by the LOR. Then the LOR, the Learning Object Repository, has this development burden to keep maintaining both the user-facing website and the LTI Resource Picker app. And then, of course, the LTI apps have to have additional credentialing requirements, which aren't needed in an API search call. So what's a better way? We believe now, and when we proposed this standard last July, so July, I guess a year and a few months ago, the idea was to provide a standard REST API for searching learning object repositories. Let the learning platform or tool own the teacher experience, and let learning platforms get to consume one search API and connect to every LOR. So all the LMSs can just write one set of code and they can connect with every single learning object repository. And then, of course, the learning object repositories, and we have 3 of them on this call. We have Knovation and SAFARI Montage and OpenEd. We all just get to implement one search API, and many LMSs can connect to us. So one of the questions is like, okay, wait a minute, I've heard about standardized metadata before. Why a new standard? Well, the current process is just too complicated for teachers to use the digital resources. And the fact is there is consensus on what a learning object should have as metadata. And that consensus is very much built on LRMI and schema.org. REST APIs are also commonplace now. One roster had established a REST API for searching, and we very much built on the great work that was done by the one roster team. So specifically, what do we care? And I'm not going to go through every single one here. I am going to point out that there are a few deltas from what's in LRMI schema.org that are quite important. One is we leverage the case standard, and we may have time to, we'll see using a case as a way of referring to learning objectives. We can use a case item URI or case item GUID to do the search, and that's not something yet that's in LRMI. Also, the ability to use an LTI link that actually has credentialing to get to the backend resource. It may not be an open resource. It may be a resource that requires purchase or some kind of user authentication. Rating is also there, and then relevance, which is this idea that the LOR may have some idea of how relevant the resource is to the search. So we really had to go beyond just what was in the LRMI standard. So we also had these learning resource types. There was some work done by the Common Core Communities of Practice to define resource types. We got some great help from Elizabeth Newman, who had worked on that to enumerate what these are. It has a nice little hierarchy, so all the assessment-related things are under assessment / all the collection-oriented things are under collection. So we leveraged a lot of the communities of practice of practical resource types that are used by institutions. So the REST API, this is a flavor of it. Obviously, as you go to different backends, it won't be imsglobal.org as the base. It'll be whatever your backend search is. And then you can search by most of the fields that we showed earlier. Some of the things don't make sense to search by, like thumbnail. And then finally, you have very powerful filtering options, the ability to define predicate logic and search for, say, a resource, something that's a resource type of video that has a published date that's greater than a certain date and less than a certain date. And so you've got the ability to express this predicate logic. This was all defined by one roster. And then there's this sort of attribute shorthand where you can say that a resource just has subject 1 on it. If you search for filter equals with subject 1 and 2, because it wants this subject 1 and subject 2, it won't be returned. If you do filter tilde, you effectively get an OR search. So since subject 1 is on it, subject 1, this record will be returned. So it was quite powerful. It was this was probably the biggest lift for us LORs to implement, is doing the powerful searching options. But for a client user, you you get a lot of powerful searching capabilities. And then, of course, as institutions, you can, one of the really great benefits is if you see that somebody's compliant, you know that you will get the metadata that is defined here. So you're very likely to have a consistent set of searching options across all the LORs. So that's my intro. I'm excited to hand this off now to my LOR colleagues to show some exciting examples of this implemented.
Thanks, Adam.
So, okay, great.
And now we'll turn it over to Ray Baranowski, to Keith Osburn at Georgia Department of Education, who's going to talk a little bit about how he sees the value of LTI Resource Search.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Kara, and certainly Adam. Thank you for that intro because I think definitely that Adam sets the stage. And I'll talk a little bit about that because, so first for everybody, so again, this is Keith Osburn. I'm Associate Superintendent for Georgia Virtual Learning. I work within, directly within curriculum instruction as well with teacher and leader support and development. And so we make up that entire teaching and learning division of the Georgia Department of Ed. Dr. Dooley, Caitlin Dooley, is my deputy superintendent, and so she answers directly to our state school superintendent, Richard Woods. And so Richard, Superintendent Woods, has come up with this plan, what he calls his Vision 2020, and specifically within that, he calls for us at the DOE to do a couple things, and one of those is very pertinent and germane to this conversation, in that he calls for us to, certainly within Georgia, provide what we call our Georgia-owned and Georgia-grown standards. And then he furthers that to say that we need to ensure that students and teachers have equitable access to high-quality instructional resources and support. Now, equitable access is a challenge whenever you've got 1.8 million kids and you've got 200,000 plus teachers. But this is something that I think that LTI Resource Search is going to help us solve. And you'll hear a little bit more about that, and certainly whenever Ray and Vikash and others talk about that, you're going to be able to see what we think is kind of instrumental in helping us solve that. So, within teaching and learning, we do the what to teach. Those are our standards. And then we help with the how to teach, which is what support and development does. So we knew further then that we needed to find equitable ways by which our standards and resources could be used in the education space. And as to something that Adam alluded to, the key ingredient is that we needed to do that with a minimal amount of effort. And so to help support this endeavor, we've been looking at ways to both leverage learning technologies to both change the culture and the workflow of our organization to systematically work together, but also to maintain a high degree of fidelity for the standards and resources that we create. And by the way, Georgia is one of the 20 Go Open states, and so all of our materials are published as OER with a Creative Commons license. Same thing here. Suddenly you see that we are kind of presenting ourselves in such a way that we're a LOR. So Georgia Virtual, specifically within my team, we have developed over 100 courses. We've designed those, and then we maintain those in-house. And so part of our discussion, which is why this is so important for us, is that we're discussing ways that we can seamlessly and transparently share these resources with our district. And while we're studying a variety of the IMS global standards, such as Common Cartridge and then Common Cartridge as a way to kind of encapsulate these courses, we still want the resources of the courses to be discoverable at the asset level. And so now the last part that Adam was talking about, where he was really talking about asset tagging and the components there, and you see that this is very, very important to us. Now, I think it's a challenging and it's a very time-consuming task for our state's teachers. I'm sure those of you in other states feel the same way. It's very challenging for our teachers to first locate a resource, and then oftentimes they're also tasked with aligning these to the proper standard. In Georgia, we call those our Georgia Standards of Excellence. And so with the courses that we're now creating this year and moving forward, we're building from the asset level that will already have the corresponding metadata tagged to them. And so this is done in an effort to reduce the efforts of our teachers who now through, say, LTI Resource Search will be able to find resources and this is where it will better equip those teachers with a very fast and agile process, and it's going to enable them to find those resources that they need. And so in just a couple of minutes, because I'm about to pass it over to Ray, really, because that's where the good stuff is at, you'll get to see a sample of kind of a prototype that we're using in-house to kind of better understand the ways to both streamline that data and make it and look at that through the lens of how is that beneficial to our teachers. And this is in the way it's a curriculum guide that has a little bit of a sample of what an LTI resource search may look like. You know, Adam, Vikash, and Ray have been incredibly instrumental in helping all of us kind of see the way that this LTI resource search will work. And I think Ray's going to be demoing a little bit of that. So without further, I'll pass that back over, and I think it's going straight to Ray there. So.
Okay, yes, hi. Thank you, Keith. My name is Ray Baranowski. I'm a developer with SAFARI Montage, and let me run through some demos of LTI Resource Search. So let me share. And I have some fun slides. So real briefly, SAFARI Montage is a learning object repository. We have locally hosted resources, district-created content, and also federated searches of a variety of third-party repositories that we can surface within our application. So what Adam spoke about earlier, where with a variety of different standards, it's always been a challenge. Every time a new third-party repository comes into play, as a developer and as a project manager, you have to consider what it's going to take to write the support for those searches. So with LTI Resource Search, everything's standardized, and it makes bringing in a new source of resources much easier. So basically, my demonstration is with OpenEd. We are, in this instance, acting as the consumer. So we are searching the OpenEd repository resources and bringing them back into the SAFARI Montage search results. And so real quickly, Adam touched on this briefly, but I just wanted to show some of the examples where this is an API call, and since it's standard, the query itself is very straightforward. In this top one here, I am stating the case GUID and the endpoint, and then that's really all there is to that search. There's some paging and some sorting that's involved, but that's all there is to it. A more complicated search below, which is searching for the term triangle within an age range and after 2017, with an itemization of the fields that we want to have returned back, and all that's capable within the API call. And since it's standardized, if we switch from, say, OpenEd to Knovation, really all we would need to do is change out the domain, and everything should fall into place. So that really makes bringing in a variety of different other partners much easier. So this is just a data return of one of those calls, so you get quite a bit of data in just one particular learning object, and that's all great for the metadata that you want to get. So I will jump out into the app itself, and just so a basic search, so I'll just go into my search. OpenEd is here, so I already searched for triangle. I'll search for frog and launch. This goes out, searches OpenEd for frog. Results are all brought back in very quickly. I can limit by grade range. Let's say we just want frogs between grades 3 to 5. Search for those, and then we're all good. From this point, within the lure, we can save a link to that lure. We could save a link to a playlist, all shooting back to OpenEd as the source. We could launch it to play right from the search results as well. So these are all launches to OpenEd. And then we have a successful integration right there. So pretty straightforward. There's a variety of other searches that are possible. I think Adam mentioned the variety of different things that you can search on. Let me jump back to here real fast. So those are basic search. We did the searches of grade ranges. Next, I'll show how we search by case standard. So let me jump back out of here. So within our interface, you can bring up the standards. We're working with the Common Core state standards for math. So let me drill down. And these are all aligned to case standards, and for the demonstration, I have a specific standard that I know is supported across the integration. So we're using this particular standard here. I'm noting that I have already some locally hosted content correlated to the standard, and then the search will take us out to an LTI Resource Search. So this will launch us right into OpenEd at this point. So we're going to get back everything from OpenEd that's aligned to that particular standard. So we'll launch that. And then these are the 16 OpenEd resources that are tied to the standard here. Everything else is the same as far as the interface goes. We can launch them right out of there. So all that works very well. So okay, and this is from the standard itself. These are again another enumeration of all the different supported search fields that you can query. So that would depend on how you integrate it with your application and what you want to offer as a filter. So this part is what Keith alluded to, and this is sort of a prototype that we were working on where we could link up a curriculum map that Georgia would be working with and then use these resource links to launch into Allure and see standards that are aligned to the standards within the units, I guess, in this instance. So, and from here, the launch into the resource could be an LTI launch into the Allure, or however you want to handle it. But let me show how that would work. So from here, let me go back to my dashboard. Search. Okay, and then, so this is the curriculum map prototype that we were discussing. So this has units and standards that are tied to each individual unit. For the demonstration, I added a unit 1, and this standard itself, this one links out to OpenSalt, shows the standard right here, and then this resource call goes to the SAFARI Montage application, passing in the case GUID, and then I'll search the Lure and then search the third-party resources for content that we already have aligned to this, so the teacher can very quickly find the resources that they need to work with that particular standard. So if I launch this, I'm going to come into the Lure. These are our locally hosted pieces of content. If I want to see what OpenEd has to offer, I can jump over there. And all of these searches, they're keeping the context of that case GUID, so everything is aligned to that standard. So it's real powerful, and it works really well. So, and it's from a developer's, if I want to switch, it makes life a lot easier being able to add a new provider of content and have everything fall into place. So that is my demonstration of LTI Resource Search within SAFARI Montage with OpenEd and working with Keith and Georgia. So I'll pass it back to Jill. Thank you.
Great job on you, Ray. It was really great to see that.
Thanks, Ray. We did have
Thank
a couple
you.
questions come in, and so I am going to bring these up now. And Ray, if you want to answer, or any of the other panelists who feel like you want to chime in, that'll be okay. So the question that came in was, how do I search for a Moodle assignment aligned to a particular Common Core standard? Anybody want to take that?
Well, it's sort of up to the Lore what they're keeping. If it's presumably that assignment has some kind of resource type, but the fact that it happened to be stored, maybe I'm missing something here, the fact that you happen to use it on Moodle isn't the important thing. The important thing is that the Lore has cataloged whatever that quote assignment is, whether it's an assessment or a game or some other or a lesson plan. It would be up to the lore to catalog it appropriately, and then you would just search within the lore.
So I guess one of the important things here is that, the learning platform would have to implement LTI Resource Search. And of course, that's part of what we hope is that you'll leave here thinking that LTI Resource Search is something of interest so that you can begin asking those learning object repositories and tools that have content that you're interested in, as well as the platforms you want to see this integrate into using LTI Resource Search. Okay,
the one thing I will add is for those of people that are using Moodle, a lot of the current development and future development of Moodle is being done by Blackboard. And I can't comment on Blackboard's product roadmap about when they'll support LTI Resource Search. I will say, though, that Blackboard was a very active participant in creating this standard.
Okay, and so with that, let me turn it over to Vikash to provide us with his demonstration.
Good, thanks, Jill. All right. Hello, everyone. This is Vikash from Knovation. For those of you who are not familiar with Knovation, we have been in business for almost 2 decades now, focusing on curating learning resources and keeping them refreshed, keeping them appropriate and accessible. What you're seeing on the screen right now is Knovation's Ikirio application, which is made available to teachers to find resources, organize them, and distribute it within the school or district, amongst teachers, and to the class students. What I'll be demoing here today is a couple of LTI Resource Search implementation calls going from Knovation system to OpenEd repository, bringing resources back, and then displaying it in the results page here. So let's get started. Here I'm just searching for the term polynomials functions, trying to find resources that are appropriate for teaching that topic. And here on my left-hand side, you'll see various options, and one of them being OpenEd. When I click on it, there is an LTI Resource Search call that is happening from Knovation system to OpenEd repository and trying to find resources that are appropriate for polynomial functions. And here you'll see all the OpenEd resources come in, again, through LTI search. This is a very simple, basic call, kind of in lines with one of the demos that Ray from SAFARI showed, a simple keyword term-based. What I'm really excited to show is the second search, which is this one, Knovation OpenEd. And just in the hopes of showcasing the power of this specification. To me, what it does is it's not just an endpoint with a bunch of parameters that simplifies the lives for developers and application implementations, but also normalizes the metadata that comes as part of that repository access. And because of that, it allows for a relatively easy intermixing of result set, and just opens up the opportunities for a cleaner and much streamlined workflows and application pages. So like for instance here, in this example, what happened was we made 2 calls using LTI search, one to Knovation's internal application and repository, and the other to OpenEd, and we pulled back resources for polynomials functions from both these repositories. Now knowing that the data is streamlined, the metadata items are the same between OpenEd and Knovation at this point, we were able to relatively easily mix the result set. And for the sake of simplicity and for the sake of this demo, we have picked out two very simple criteria for mixing. One is the publish date for the resources, and then the rating that is tied on the resources. So because of that, you will see OpenEd resources that are marked with higher rating are shown higher up than Knovation resources. And similarly, as I scroll down and go to different other pages, you'll see resources as they are available from these different repositories. On this page, it just happened to be, looks like most of Knovation resources. Hopefully, we'll see one more page with a mix. And yeah. So here again, based on the interleaving criteria that we put in place, you'll see again a mix of resources. So to me, this is the true potential moving forward of this LTI resource. In conversations with a lot of different implementations, we had always struggled in trying to mix results from different repositories, and through this demo, hopefully you get a sense for that this is a good, that specification provides a good first step towards that direction. So this was my demo for the iCurio piece. Before I hand it over, I just have one other item I wanted to just quickly showcase is we at Knovation have put a demo page for people who are interested in LTI Resource Search. If you go to Knovation Learning, click Developers, and there's a demo option that will come up. And there you will be able to play around against Knovation's repository using the LTI implementation and see the data that comes back and forth along with all the URL changes and all the parameters that get adjusted. So again, this is the tool. It has different options. It has been intentionally kept simple to allow for just that initial get to know what the search is all about and what are the capabilities it may provide without having to write a single line of code. So here again, if I try to find I'm just trying to find resources using LTI search against Knovation repository for polynomials. And here you'll see something that you noticed in Ray's slides is the URL and all the parameters that it takes and how it got formed, trying to find for polynomials, in this case limited to 25 result set. And you see this simplified kind of a pretty version, but I think what is more interesting is this Json view, where you will be able to see the exact JSON that came back from the repository, in this case Knovation's repository, and what were the data elements that were provided for each resource that came back. So feel free to go to this page. I can, maybe Jill, if you can share this with the group, the link. Otherwise, you can go to Knovation Learning, click on Developers, and then Demo, and you will be on this page.
We will definitely make the link available. Following this webinar, resources will be posted associated with the webinar. And we'll send out information to those who are registered.
Perfect. And that's all I had.
Well, thank you, Vikash. That was great. We have had some questions come in. I think, Kara, do you have any particular questions we should ask the group?
We have a few, yes. So I'm going to just throw them out there. The first is, do you have a list of repos that have LTI Resource Search?
So I'll take that one first. The reason we're doing this webinar is because this is a brand new standard from IMS Global. And so the folks who are on today's webinar representing ACT, Knovation, and SAFARI Montage are the current repositories that have implemented resource search. We know that more will as time goes along and this standard has a little more time to exist in the world. And we hope that you'll ask the repositories that you particularly like to look at resource search and consider it.
Thanks, Jill. The only thing I was going to add is there are several others that are implementing, but it would be inappropriate for me to sort of speak on their behalf. They need to have the excitement of their own fanfare. There are several lores on this call. I noticed from the registration list, so we are hoping that several of the lores on the call that have not implemented yet will be added to the list soon.
Great, thanks, Adam and Jill. Next question, do the results returned include a relevance rating as well?
Yes, I can take that. This is Akash. Yes, from the specification perspective, we have a data element that captures the relevance, and every repository that is compliant has the option to provide that value.
Okay, go ahead, Adam.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's maybe obvious, but obviously the relevance is going to be each repository idea. So interleaving with relevance is, of course, a little bit fraught with, like interleaving between different lores using relevance is a little bit dangerous because, we each have our own algorithms for computing relevance. But it's certainly very helpful for using as a sort from a given learning object repository.
Great, next question. Is previous similar attempts struggled with 3 problems? The first, authors didn't fill in complex metadata forms. The second, teachers seldom use advanced search. And the third, delivery of broken links. So how are these issues being addressed with LTI Search?
I'd like to jump in and tell you how we handle this at ACT's Open Ed product. First of all, we don't really just do we're not a crowdsource, upload. Here's my resource. Come look at it. We do aggregate from many other OER repositories and many publishers. And when we work with the publishers, we have explicit arrangements with them. And part of those arrangements are that all the metadata is there. In fact, we also ensure that if we work with a publisher and they have not provided the full metadata, we supplement that with our own curator resources. So we don't have underspecified resources. And then also to the issue of broken links, that is a part of any proper lore's job, is to ensure the currency and availability of all the resources. So I can tell you at Open Ed, we spend a lot of effort making sure that there are no broken links. And I'll let Vikas and Ray speak for themselves, but I would imagine that they spend a lot of effort on that as well. And then I think one of the questions was how do you make sure that the teacher really they may not choose to use all the metadata, but can at least do it. That is certainly one of the best practices of building an interface. When we have people use our API, whether it's LTI Resource Search or an older API, we always talk with that consuming LMS or consuming tool and say, you need to make sure it's not just a keyword search, right? You need to make sure that you have the ability to search by learning objectives and grades and subjects and resource types. So that's my attempt to answer that question.
Hey, Kara, and this is Keith. So I'll jump in for just a second. Certainly that first part has been a challenge. And so I'll look at it and attack it a little bit differently as an OER producer, certainly having a content team that produces those resources. And then from the production of us making those, oftentimes our tech services group are the ones that heretofore have been challenged with kind of doing the alignment and the metadata. Sometimes at a great cost in both man hours and also a head-scratching event because, they weren't the ones that originated that. And so to answer that, I think those of us that do this type of resource creation, the responsibility lies with us to be better, which is why I specifically said something about really kind of changes in business practices and workflow. And so specifically within, our content development team now looking at that and wanting to tag those assets at that level so that people can harvest and discover them there, it becomes our responsibility to ensure that we include that information. Because again, typically that's the person that either created the resource or that was the resource they knew would be the best to align for this particular standard. So why shouldn't it have been done at that point in time? It should have been. And then upstream from there for those that do the harvesting of that. Then it's not necessarily a challenge. And I think that as a result of having resources that have a higher fidelity of accurate metadata associated with that, I think that the last challenge of getting teachers to use the advanced components of searches, they'll be more akin to do that. Sorry, off to you, Kara.
Great. Before we transition, Vikash or Ray, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, this is Vikash. Thanks, Kara. I can just add quickly that, as Adam mentioned, for us also, it's not crowdsourced for the resources, and we have elaborate and extensive team with decades of experience who populate the metadata, and we take pride in that. That's our actually bread and butter. So we have very extensive systems in place to check for appropriateness and accessibility and availability of those resources. And just to throw some of the numbers out, we have historically seen that within our repository, we roughly between 7 to 8% or a little bit higher resources change their URLs every year. And we are able to effectively resurrect most of them. And on an average, on a course of 1 year, we have 2% that we are not able to revive. So that gives you a sense for how much effort goes behind on the Knovation side of things to make sure that resources, when they are available, we put best effort to make sure that they are indeed available.
Okay, hi, and this is Ray. I can add very similar comments. We have an internal metadata team that works with all of the OER content, so it's reviewed internally, and there is a high confidence that the metadata and the URLs that we're offering are good at the moment. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for that question. If you do have additional questions, please submit them. We will have a little bit of time at the end, but now we're going to transition back to Adam Blum, who's going to do a demonstration of ACT's client for implementing LTI Resource Search. Adam?
Okay, thank you. What I want to show now is doing a search with a command line client. Now, when you're really going to do this, you will end up using one of these very nice clients that Ray and Vikash have created. However, what I wanted to show you is that we've created a command line tool to enable this to be done, and this is available open source. I will show it shortly. But what this lets you do is actually sort by various criteria. So I can sort by, and this is just the command line tool. This is intended really for developers, like to give you a really simple example of how this stuff is done. So I'm going to show you the URL here where this is all available. It's all available open source on GitHub. If you are writing a client, I think you will find this to be a very helpful way to start it. What we're going to do is we're going to allow you to search by various things. We're going to let you search by the keyword, the resource type, the publisher, or the case item objective. And what I'm going to do now is, let's see, where did my, here it is. I'm going to go to OpenSalt now. and I'm going to go to opensalt.net, and I'm going to pick a specific learning objective, and then I'm going to search by that learning objective. So I can go to opensalt.net, which is hosted by PCG. It's an instance of this free open source tool, and I'm going to go search down to a specific learning objective. I'm going to pick the objective 6G1. So here's 6.G.1, areas of right triangles, and I can just pick this URL, and I can now start. This is an unambiguous reference to a learning objective. And now, if you go and do a git pull as a developer and you pull down this search CLI, you'll see that there are a couple scripts. One is for searching Knovation, one's for OpenEd. I can search by this particular learning objective, and I'm now going to get back a bunch of resources on 6G1. It's actually showing you there the process of validating its key. So you'll see we authenticate with our key. We get a number of resources, and it's bringing them back in tabular format. So you can see we have 68 resources on 6G1 within OpenEd. You can also search here by the sort of human readable identifier. So I can search Knovation based on the kindergarten counting standard. And so you'll see we actually go hit against Knovation's URL, and we get a whole bunch of kindergarten counting standards. I can go against OpenEd. We get a whole bunch of kindergarten counting resources. I can search against OpenEd and do this. Now, obviously, this is not what an end user would do, but as a developer, I think it's useful as sort of a test tool against the back end. But the most important part is this open source that's out at this URL, where you can see, hey, how would I do a search by learning objective? How would I sort the things coming back? How would I search by subject? How would I search by resource types? All of these different ways to sort are exposed as specific command line options. So if you are a developer and you're considering adopting your tool, please take a look at this sample command line client. And we are happy to give you, if you are considering implementing from the client, please write to me, and we're happy to give you, I pasted the URL, it's resource-search@act.org, and we're happy to give you experimental keys. And also, if you want to go against one of the other LORs, we'd encourage you to write to them as well. So that's the extent of my demo. Hopefully there's some questions.
We do have another question that came in. Are semantic relations, so to find semantically similar resources, part of the standard?
Well, I would say, if two things are related to the same learning objective, they're certainly semantically related. So all of the LORs in question, we all emphasize alignments to learning objectives. And that's the reason why I showed you my demo from picking a case-defined learning objective and searching by that learning objective. So in my opinion, if you are searching by learning objective and two things are on the same learning objective, especially as defined in case, which excels at sort of fine-grained learning objective, identifying fine-grained learning objectives, I think that's a great way to find semantically related resources.
Thanks, Adam. As we now wrap up, and I know we're a couple minutes over, I just want to point out that our call for proposals for our May conference is now open, and you'll be able to find more information on the website. There are some related resources. We'll share those after the webinar that you can access. And just as the final note, we'll ask you to go back to today's webinar detail page to gain access to those resources, including slides and so on. And so if you're interested in getting involved, we would encourage you to consider membership in IMS, and you can email us for more information. Thanks so much to all of our presenters for today. We appreciate your sharing your great information and look forward to finding more on LTI Resource Search in the future. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.